Okay, so welcome everybody. We are here with Laura. She's one of the winners of the JS Nation contest. So she created a very cool project with Frontity, and the prize was this consultory session with members of the Frontity team. So we are going to introduce ourselves. My name is JuanMa, and I'm in the developer relations team of Frontity. So our mission is create documentation videos and be aware of the needs of the community, so it becomes more easy to create projects with Frontity. And here with me is David.
Yep. I'm David. I'm one of the developers in Frontity, and well, I was involved in the design and the implementation of Frontity from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the winner is Laura here. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am Laura. I am a full stack developer, and well, I don't know what more to say. I'm based in Madrid now,
Okay.
and yeah, that's it.
I'm interested in knowing how did you find out about Frontity? How did you discover Frontity?
Well, actually, I did in two ways. Last year, before I got a job, I was talking to a friend to develop a portfolio for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to find a way to have a CMS that was easy for her to use.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew how to use WordPress, but I was developing in React mainly. So
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for a way to combine these two things. And I learned of Frontity back then. But in the end, I didn't do any project because then I got a job and I was busy with that. So it kind of got left-sided. But I knew of it back then. And then I had tickets for JS Nation this year. And I saw the live demo in the JS Nation Live. And I thought it was pretty cool. I already knew about it and I wanted to learn about it because I think especially in Spain, WordPress is something that clients are really used to and they really like using it. So it's, yeah, I think it's a good idea. And yeah, then I decided to participate.
Yeah. Yeah, you did a really cool project. Let me show Frontity because in the blog there is a post recently published where we can see the project you created for the JS Nation contest. Also the source code is there and we will comment it later. But this is the project that you have created with the Frontity. We can see here in the source code that is created with Frontity. And yeah, let's focus into this project. And you have some questions that you sent us by mail, but going into the questions, I'd like to ask you your experience using Frontity. I mean, what did you like, what you didn't like, and
Well, my experience overall, it was quite positive because I found that if you already know how to use React, learning to use Frontity is very doable. It's not that difficult. You just need time. And also the documentation is, I think, is really good because it's very well structured and it's very easy to find everything. Also in the community, there are a lot of posts explaining things that are not explained yet in the docs. I also found some pull requests from the team, everything. So there's a lot of information online. And one of the things that I liked the most was going into the source code of Frontity, because when I didn't know how to do something, like for example, one of the questions I have is about the custom handlers, and I was struggling with that a bit. So I went into the source code, and that helped a lot to see how you were implementing your own handlers. So I could kind of copy the way you did it in a way, and say, well, I mean, I was using JavaScript and you were using TypeScript, but it's similar, obviously. So yeah, I think that was what I enjoyed the most, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Glad to hear that. Okay, and now let's go into the questions. You sent us a mail, so maybe we can just go point by point. Do you want to talk about this first question you have here?
Yeah, I think so also, because it's written in a mix of Spanish and English still, so I'm gonna just do it in English all the way. And so my first question was about how to implement CSS and styles, because I wanted to have kind of a style guide, because there were some things that I was going to apply to the same elements, but I like in that way, traditionally I would use classes, but classes are not recommended here. So I didn't know how to have some common styles. So I couldn't use the global component for that, because that one you apply styles to specific elements. So I thought it was gonna be easier to have some global JavaScript object, but I didn't love it. But it was like the solution that I got to make it a bit neat and clean. So yeah, I wanted to know about the best practice to implement styles with Frontity.
Well, let me give you a first answer, and then David can expand and give you a more detailed answer about this. Okay, so to apply styles in Frontity, you have several ways. Like the one way that you have already applied is using the global component in the same way that you have done
the styles folder. Oh yeah.
Here. So this allows you to define global styles in the traditional way. I mean, you can import here like a whole CSS file, for example. The problem here is that you will be loading a bunch of styles that maybe they are not being used in your final pages that the user are viewing at the end. So the recommended approach here in Frontity is using CSS in JS. That means creating components like this one. The advantages of using this are several. First, you have the ability of defining styles depending on specific conditions. So you can, instead of creating a different class with different styles and change the styles, you can go directly to the property and change the value depending on, for example, some value on the state. That's one advantage. The second one is that the components, specifically if you use different bundles, are only loaded when you load specific pages. I can think of those first advantages. So from there, you also created this style guide here that you are importing in all the components that requires these values. For example, if we look for this here in the header, You are importing this here. And once it's here, you can directly use the content of this file, for example, here. So one improvement over this could be just add this to the state, because one is in the state, you can use it here. And for example, you could either pass this style guide as a property of the component. So you could do something like a theme. Let's imagine it's in the state. We could do something like state dot theme dot style guide, for example. And then each component, mobile, or in this case, mobile menu is not a good example, but maybe the description, description, we could do something like this. And then this property, so this component will be able to access this by doing color equals, and then here we can have access to that. So that's one approach. That's one way of having this in the state. The advantages of this is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we change a property in the state, the new state will be transmitted into all the components that are connected to the state. So we can dynamically make our React components react to the changes in the theme. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, that will work as long as you are connecting your components to Frontity using Connect.
Exactly. Exactly. Like it is done here, we are connecting this header component to the state. So it's receiving the state. If we attach the style guides, we can centralize the use of the state. This is not really a good practice, like importing things outside of the scope. So it's more centralized. And also you have the ability of changing properties in that theme and making your whole React components react to this change. A very good example is the, let me undo this, is the light theme and dark theme that you have created. This could be handled in this way by maybe changing, you have done it in a very smart way, because the, what is the index here? No, the index here. Yes, you have defined here in the style guide a set of CSS values according to different color schemes, and then just by selecting this or this, you can have like different modes. So yeah, you can do that, or you can directly maybe modify these properties based on this. I don't know. You have like several ways, but yeah, I think that an improvement over what you have done is centralizing the styles in the theme. This is something that can be done. You can directly load the styles here. As for example, I was doing this here. Instead of importing in every component, you can just import it here, load this in the state theme, and then you will have this available. So it will be a small improvement over what you have done, but I think it's a better strategy.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think, David?
Yeah, it will be a good strategy. One thing we tried to do before, as we are using emotion, that it's a CSS in the JS library. It already has solution for theming, like a theme prop that you add to the provider component. I don't remember how. And we try to inject the Frontity state in that prop directly, but we found out that components, state components didn't render again when the state props changed. So yeah, it's right now it's better solution to just add those properties in the state and get them in the components and inject the props, that values to the style components.
Here you have a whole discussion about all this theming, and as you can see, it's a feature discussion. And another approach, Orballo is a developer that has been working with Frontity very deeply in the last year, so his opinion is strongly based. And one approach that he uses is, one thing that you can do is pass the state values as a prop to the style components, and then in the style component you can use these elements. Another approach is this one. Like you can create directly React components that receive the state, and then by using the CSS, you can make use of that to a style. It's like an alternative of the style components. But both strategies will allow you to use a centralized theme object to be used all along your components.
Yeah, this will be like another way to write style components. Instead of using a style dot the element and so on, is creating a very simple component that will be connected to Frontity using connect and returns any element you want with the CSS property.
Yeah, the cool thing about this is that any change in the state will be reflected in the React component. Okay, I think that did we provide an answer over this question?
Yeah, definitely. Also, it's something to remember, keep everything centralized in the state. It's not only for styles, but in general, it's a good thing to remember. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's a good rule to be followed in Frontity projects.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to explain the second question?
Yeah, so for the second question, first I need to give everyone a bit of background about my website. So this website is for a writer, and she wanted to have like two different pages on the website. One, the main page where you have all of her texts, and then she wanted to have another one that you can only access through a password, and that's the second page is Zona Secreta in Spanish. In English, it's a secret zone or something like that. And this one is for the works that she's still working on and so on. And so I kind of had a problem with this. Well, first I created a custom handler, so the URL wouldn't have the /category /Slack. So it's only the Slack, which is hidden. And that was working fine. But then I created an endpoint with a serverless function in Vercel to have the process of the user giving you the password and then comparing, see if it's okay. And then you let the user access this page. But the problem, that was working, but the thing is that I couldn't get all of these posts in the state, because they are already password protected in WordPress. So when you do the first fetch to get the content from WordPress. They don't give you the content, they only give you every title. And then I was trying to make the request again to the WordPress REST API, and it wasn't updating. It wasn't giving the password. So I found a pull request, and that was, I think that was a bug that was in Frontity before, but it was fixed in May. I have the link in my code in the index.js. And but somehow, I don't know why, even if I was using the force parameter, I mean the force argument and everything, I wasn't getting it updated on the state for some reason. I still don't know why. So my temporary solution was to, like in the first fetch, when you load that page and you have the modal to put the password in, when you load that page for the first time, you don't fetch anything. So I blocked that. If that was the URL, I was just returning the function, and that it's in the custom handler. And then you can access that page when you can access the data when you put the password in. Because I wasn't able to update the data on the state. So I had to make it only fetch it once, and that's when you already have the password. That was temporary solution because I couldn't get it to work otherwise. I'm still not sure why, because it should work with force, but I tried to use force on the Frontity settings file also, and also in the individual handler, and I'm not sure what was happening.
Okay. I'm not first of all, I'm not sure I understood properly the whole issue here, but let me add some information. So first of all is that the use of fetch may be confusing because we have two fetches in Frontity. If you go to the documentation, if you go to the docs, there is a fetch function that is provided by the Frontity module. If you go to, let me look for it, fetch. No, fetch. Fetch, yes. So we have this fetch. This fetch can be imported directly from Frontity. And this fetch is an isomorphic fetch method. That means that with this method, you can actually perform a request to any endpoint you may have available. So in case you want to perform an extra request to another endpoint, for example, the one, I think if I understood correctly, you created like a serverless function with server, and from there you have some endpoints available.
Yeah, but that's only to compare the passwords.
Okay. Well, in case you create like extra endpoints using a serverless function, or you may want to perform a request to any other API, you can use this fetch method. The cool thing about this fetch method is that it's completely isomorphic. That means that it will work in both the server side and in the client side. That is one of the challenges we have always when we work in a Frontity project. So this is one fetch. The other fetch is the one available in source. This fetch is a bit different because this fetch is actually attached to links. So whenever we do a fetch over a specific link, what we do is request to the WordPress link defined based on these settings, it will look for the proper link, and it will take it. This method is in charge of performing the request and putting that data available into the state. This method is also connected to handlers. So in case you don't actually have that specific link created in your WordPress, what you can do is defining your own handler. And this handler will respond to this fetch method. This means that if you are fetching a link that is not defined, you can define your custom link in the same way that you have done here. So whenever, here what you have done is, whenever the Frontity code performs a fetch to the home page, all these things will be done. And in the same way with this, you can create a pattern here, and whenever you perform a fetch to this pattern, all this code will be here. So, and also the fetch method, this source.fetch method, another thing that takes care is of not performing a second request if it has been already done. So it kinds of cache the result of a request. That's why we may want to use the force true. So in case this fetch has been done, because you are using this force true because this fetch, it's been done previously in some.
I mean, initially it was being done because when you go to that page before you put the password, you only see the model. So, but the URL is being recognized and it goes through the remove category handler. And so that was being done. And then, yeah, this force true is something that I tried and I couldn't get it to work. But then I left it there just in case. But yeah.
Well, in this specific case, I think it requires a bit some research on our side. So if you want to create a specific thread in the community forum, we can work specifically in this issue. So we will clone the project and we will have a look at the how the code is built. So I think that we will be able to provide a better answer than now in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Unless you, David, do you want to add something here?
Maybe we can go through the code and yeah, Laura can explain step by step what the handler is doing. And
okay, do you want to explain like the all the process of this hidden link?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Let's go directly to your GitHub, because here you have like the latest version. And from here,
yeah, that's my Steam source. And then index, yeah. So it's that first handler. And oh no, yeah, is it this one? Yes.
you have two handlers, this remove category-based handler and this one, public post handler.
Yeah, it's the first one, remove category-based handler. So in this one, basically, I'm getting every category, and what I want to do is remove the /category part and only have the slash. And if you see that comment that is super long, after that we have, well, the second comment, sorry, we have an if statement. And when you see, here we check for two things. For a variable that I have in the state that is called does user have password, and for the route. So if the user doesn't have the password yet and the route is hidden, then I return and I don't execute the rest of the handler. So that's for the first time that the user goes to that page, because that's when you show the model for the user to put the password in. And that's to prevent it from doing the first threat and getting that data.
Okay, can we check that? When is this happening here?
That's when you go to a secret zone. And now that would be the case when it's happening. Now it's not executing the handler. And that's, if you want to check that, you can check in the Frontity global object in state. And there is a posts object there. And it should be empty for the ones that are for this category. So posts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these posts, I mean, we would have to check manually, like the content, and compare it to the ones on the main page. But I checked it already, and these ones are the only ones that are public. I mean, you can check, maybe you see the category in one of the posts. All of them are going to have the category public.
Categories.
Well, we have the ID.
Yeah. 9085, 9085, 9085, 9085. And if we go to category, yeah, the 9085
exactly,
is public. Yes.
That's the one. Yeah. So you don't have any information for hidden in the first time that I mean, not the first time only. You don't have it until you put the password in. Now, if you put the password, which I changed, and I would have to look it up because I have it written somewhere. But
this password is the one defined in the serverless function that you created apart.
Well, actually, I would have it in the .env file that I have here, so I could tell you and change it later and tell Christina. But if you want, we can do that. Let me see. In file. Can I tell you the password in Spanish just because it's gonna be easier?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can either pass the password through the Zoom chat if you want.
That is gonna be even better. Okay, so it's here. Chat. Okay. I send it. Okay. So now if you check again in Frontity.state, we should have more posts and also the category.
Yes. And the category 9085, 9085. But we have one with a category of 35. And this category is, category hidden.
Yeah. So that is because the remove category based handler is working. And so if you go back to the code to show that handler, it is in remove in that file. Yeah, here. So
yeah, but let me check.
In the GitHub.
Yes.
Yeah. So now this if statement is false. So we keep going inside the handler, we execute everything else. And what I do here is that I get the category handler that you have in Frontity. So I use that one and I save it in a constant category handler. And then basically what I do is that I create my own arguments and all of that to kind of trick it into giving me what I want. I mean, trick it. And that's what I do. In the end, I'm executing your handler. And here you see that I tried also in line 55. I'm using force true, but still, if I remove the if statement in the beginning, for some reason, maybe I mean, it's very likely that I'm doing something wrong, obviously, but I couldn't get it to work. So that's why I only use this handler when I have the password. So that works. I don't know if it makes a bit more sense now. I mean, it's a lot of things and it's very
Yes,
fast,
well,
so.
in my case, I don't know if you, David, have something to comment here. I would like to have a deep look at this code.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm just noticing is that the priority of the handlers are making that this handler will be executed always before this one.
That could be a problem.
Maybe you want the other way around because of
Yeah,
this
that could be.
hidden thing.
It's true that I struggled with the priority also. I was a bit confused with that.
Well, the thing about priority is that as this pattern can make some handlers collide, you need to establish like a priority. So there
Yeah.
will be a lot of handlers defined that will be executed, but this priority allows you to establish the right order you want. And if I understand this correctly, the lower the value, the higher the priority. So a
That's right.
lower value makes this handler to be executed before. So maybe this can be something
Yeah.
to be taken into account. But anyway, I would like to have a look at this code.
Yeah. Apart from that, um, um, can we take a look at what data is stored in the data objects in the state? If you go to the site, 1 second.
Yes. Here?
Yeah. What do we have in the data object under, yeah, inside source, data?
Mm-hmm.
We have hidden. What's inside hidden?
Category hidden. Oh, no, hidden.
Yeah, we have hidden there. Okay. And inside items, I guess we have the current hidden posts. Okay, that's right. I will do one thing. If you go to the code, instead of just return it, because the idea is that those data objects represent somehow the information stored in that URL, in that link. So instead of just returning at the beginning of this handler, I will populate something in that data object like is protected or is not visible or is not accessible or something like that, instead of, because later in your theme you are going to use that object to render components and, for example, show that modal. I don't know what are you checking in the component to show the model or not showing the model.
What I'm doing, well, actually, I don't remember exactly how I built that component. Let me see 1 second. Auto protected. Oh yeah, I think in the list component, I created some if statement. I don't remember exactly where I showed it, but basically what I'm taking is the variable that I have in the state, that's user have password, and if that's false, I render the modal, and if it's not, I render the other thing. But I don't remember exactly where I put it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I will say to add a similar property or something in the data object to, yeah, so you run the state source get from that link and check in that data if you have to render the model or you have to render the posts.
Yeah.
And apart from that, why I didn't understand correctly why you are not using hidden in the pattern for that handler instead of
I
just
mean,
a whole,
This?
yeah.
yeah. That's a good question. Actually, I should be using just hidden because in this case, it's used only for hidden. I wanted to keep it not very specific, so I could use that for more categories in the future. But in this case, it's true that it would be easier to just use it with hidden, and then it's also easier to check the priority and all that, because it's only for this in the end. So, yeah.
Okay, no, it's because there is a problem with handlers, with the patterns of handlers, and once one of the patterns matches the link, then if that handler runs, no other handler will run after that. So if pattern like that has lower priority, has a no, not a low priority, a high priority, I mean a lower number, and it's like that pattern, I guess this handler will always run and other handlers with lower priority never run, because this pattern is like very very general. I mean, I think every link will will match that that pattern.
And actually, yeah, that's true. That's why I had to create a second part in this handler for when the route is for a page or a post. So the about me and the specific, like the individual post page, to redirect that. Sorry, to redirect that to the post handler from Frontity. So yeah, changing the pattern and just having hidden would make everything easier and less code also.
Yeah, and let me add something here because take into account that the whole Frontity architecture is meant for React projects that need to have SSR rendering and client rendering. So the pages can be indexed and so on. So in this scenario, when we go into hidden pages protected by passwords, we don't really need Frontity in those pages. I mean, those pages doesn't really need to be SSR rendered because you are not going to never go directly to these pages unless you go through a previous password. So this content, I mean, the access to these pages or not can be handled safely in the client side. So maybe you can simplify this whole logic just by adding the proper code in the React component by using a use effect. And whenever the post or whatever component is rendering, the post component is rendered in the use effect, you can check this if the user has been logged or not, and in some cases you can redirect them to any other component that asks for a proper password. So in this case, maybe you don't need to create this whole logic by using patterns and handlers and so on, because you don't really need this. You don't really need SSR rendering for these pages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
So, well, this is something to be taken into account.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna try that actually.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Anyways, I will create a topic in the community and we can discuss this more deeply.
Yes.
I think the problem here is that I made some wrong decisions, but maybe it's interesting for someone else if they have the same problem. But yeah.
Sure.
Okay, let's review some other questions that you
Yeah.
have. For example, this one.
Yeah, that one is about a DOM manipulation, and that's because I wanted to create a custom scroll bar, and that's the one that it's on the left side. And while I looked for some code, I found some resources. So that code is mostly not mine. I just adapted it to my project, and the link is also in my code if you wanna check it. And the thing is that I wasn't sure if like what would be the best way to do this, because I tried to turn everything into like the React way of doing things, because React is the one that has to take care of the DOM. So I was using refs and all of that, but still I have the feeling that I don't really like having another file for DOM manipulation. And for example, I still had to use some document.query selector for the root div, for example. We can see that in line 3. And yeah, I was wondering what would be the best practice in this case.
Well, in my opinion, well, the best practice is, of course, not going outside of React and try to manage this with React. So my approach here would be first, check if there is a component already created that can provide us with the behavior we want. Second, if there is no such component and we need to access specific elements from the DOM, the way to do that in React is by using refs. So yeah, let's try to do that with refs by adding the ref to the proper component. And yeah, from there, if there is no way of using refs in a component because the framework, in this case Frontity, doesn't allow you to implement this behavior, then yes, I would ask in the community forum or ask for a feature request in the framework.
Okay. I mean, I think this case is very specific. I don't think it's a problem to not be able to access the root element in Frontity. So if I had more time, I would have tried to change the DOM manipulation code to not need to get the root element. But it was 2 weeks, so I didn't want to be stuck with that, because the scroll bar was like a secondary thing for
exactly.
but yeah, definitely.
Anyway, the way you have approach it, this is the correct way. I mean, first it has to work, and then it has to be done like in a better way.
Yeah.
So that's completely correct. I mean, if this is working and this doesn't give you more problems, maybe this is not a priority and you can focus on some other things. But yeah, doing this can give you problems in the future. So yeah, I would try to do that like in the React way.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Is it okay to have another file for the manipulation? Should I include that in a component, or
What do you mean exactly?
like I'm not sure. I was just wondering because like when you use React, like before we had React, we were building websites with the manipulation with vanilla JavaScript or jQuery and so on, and you build the whole front end using that. But now you have React, and every change, I'm used to just changing everything in a component and based on state, or like as you said, use effect functions and all of that. So having another file where I'm doing vanilla JavaScript and dot manipulation, I wasn't sure if it was the best option, or, but it was the only way that I found to do it because, yeah. I mean, I needed an on-scroll event listener and all of those things. So,
well, I'm pretty sure there are some components that may fit this use case. So I would do a deeper research on that and check if there is some React component that can be used here. So in the case you find it, you can directly remove this. But then from there, yes, using refs is the way to go. Then if you want to encapsulate this in some way, you can use hooks or higher order functions. So then you can apply this behavior to a specific React component. And yeah, that could be,
okay.
I mean, to share behaviors in different components. And right now with React, you have like these two ways,
Yeah.
like higher order components or hooks.
Yeah, that would be better. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Do you want to add something here, David, regarding the scroll and how to implement the scroll in a Frontity project and so on?
Well, not really. Maybe I would use. I'm very used to a library called React Spring that is used to create animations and so on. So maybe I will create like a hook to handle the scroll status and use that hook to animate the scroll bar, something like that. Yeah, I will have like a component to the scroll bar and a hook to handle the scroll state.
Okay. Yeah, I would feel more comfortable with that actually. I think I might change it in the future. So, okay.
Okay, great. So let's go to the next question.
Well, this one, actually, it's related to the DOM manipulation one. It's because I needed to get the div with the ID root. And I was wondering why, because I'm used to using create React app, and you have access to the file index.html where you have the HTML where you are going to insert every component and all that. And I was just wondering why I couldn't find that in the Frontity boilerplate, but I was just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough question, I think. I guess right now there is no way to manipulate or modify the template we're using to render the HTML. That's something we want to do in the future. Actually, we are right now trying to implement a AMP in Frontity. So we will have a template for AMP, but yeah, I think right now there is no way to change anything or manipulate the template. It's something that the core package is rendering, and yeah, but that's something we want to change in the future. for sure. Yeah, you can go to the Frontity repository, the core package. If I remember correctly, in do you remember the name of the file?
Me?
No, I was sorry.
Okay, sorry.
I was talking with JuanMa.
You mean the file that returns the index HTML?
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay, let me find it.
Client, server, templates.
Yeah, it should be there.
Yes, this is right.
Yeah, that is. Right now there is no way to modify this template, but in the future we want to change that, and maybe we can create any package to modify these templates, and depending on the endpoint or the URL you want to use, then one template or another will be used. Right now, these are the attributes that you can modify somehow. But yeah, the HTML attributes that will come from the head component that Frontity exposed. All that is happening with head is also coming from the head component. And you have also Frontity link and Frontity style that comes from emotion. I don't remember where Frontity link is coming. Then you have the head body attributes, and the Frontity script that is rendered below. So yeah, you can right now you can't change anything in this template. Maybe you wanted to add a class to the root element, or what do you?
I wanted to be able to access it to create a ref, but also for that you kind of need it to be a React component. So
no, but here is a string. It's not a component,
yeah.
so you won't have. What you can do actually is to create a ref for the root element you are rendering inside the root element. And maybe that's enough in your case.
I tried doing that and it wasn't fully working, but I think what I should have done if I had more time was to change the code to make it work for that case.
Okay.
Instead, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, in this case, this would mean the theme component is the first one loaded. Yeah. Yes, like this,
that one.
Making this a div instead of a fragment and adding a ref. This is like the higher component you can attach a ref.
Then would it be fine with the head component and all of that, because you have some meta tags there? So, or would I have to head elements in the end? If I because this is a React fragment, so if I instead create a div, inside that div, I would have this head component under title, and also the title component. That's supposed to go in HTML. That should go not inside body, but inside head, right? So I'm not sure if then we would have the head and the meta tags inside the body, or?
Okay. Well, what that component does is to move those elements, those components to the head part of the
Okay.
HTML template. So it doesn't matter where, in which place you are rendering head, because those elements won't appear there. Those elements will appear in the head tag.
Okay. Then yeah, it would work. I think if I turn that React fragment into a div, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no problem with that.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. Okay.
Great. And now the last question. Yes. Do you want to?
This one is because one of the things that I want to learn this year is TypeScript. And I was wondering what benefits you found with using TypeScript instead of JavaScript.
Yeah, well, sometimes it was kind of difficult to create types for some specific situations. But well, overall, TypeScript is great for two things mainly. And one is that having everything typed makes really easy to write code, because if you are writing a function or an object and you don't attach to a specific interface or the type we have defined or anything, it will complain. So it makes the code more robust, because it's harder to write the wrong code. It's harder to write property with an invalid value and so on. And the other thing is that text editors like VS Code, if you're using TypeScript, it will recommend values when you're writing code and that code is typed. The editor knows what you're doing. Like if you're writing a specific property and you write dot, then it knows the type of that property and suggests a bunch of properties that belongs to that tag. So it's like more easy to find the right, and that's great for people that it's starting and doesn't really know the API at this moment when it starts developing. And because the editor suggests you what properties that object have and what arguments that function have. So yeah, it's mainly for those two things, to make the code more robust and to help people to write code.
Okay.
That's the two things.
I would like to add a few more things. First is that it helps you to kind of document your code in a mandatory way, because you need to really define the type of data you want to have. So that serves as documentation. Second is that because you are defining types and you are using TypeScript, you don't really need to add specific check-ins in some functions, because the code itself will not allow you to compile, because in build time you will get errors. So you don't really need to, I mean, your code once in production, if it gets there, that means that no wrong types are being sent to any function.
Okay.
And the last thing is that because Frontity is strongly based in the idea of packages, I mean, we have one core package, but then, for example, there is a source package that is the interface that all the source packages has to follow. So one implementation of this source interface is WP source. That is the one that you've been using in your project and the one that is currently available for any project. But there could be some other source packages. For example, a package that interacts with a GraphQL WordPress server, for example. By using the TypeScript interfaces, we can assure that all the packages follows the same interface. That allows that these packages are easily interchangeable. So you could use either this package or some other package. Another example is the analytics. Here we have the interface, so the analytics package is supposed to be built with these types, and the interface is specifically here, I think. It's here.
I guess the interface will be in the types. Well, but I'm not sure this is a good example, maybe because this is more like a library instead of just a type, just an interface, because it also defines some actions that analytics packages needs to implement. But yeah, any analytics package must extend the analytics.
Exactly. This
the
is
analytics
the example.
interface.
You have the types, and you can define the Google Analytics or the Google Tag Manager Analytics or Comscore Analytics or any other one, and they should all extend these types. So they all should follow the same interface. And that is very helpful when you want to create a framework that that can be extended with several packages. This is like it's the same idea of plugins in Gatsby or plugins in WordPress. You can encapsulate logic, but by using the idea of packages, using the same interface, you can use either one or another and everything will work. And that it's that can be easily implemented with the idea of interfaces, of TypeScript interfaces.
Is that related to namespaces? Because I was reading about it this morning, and one of the examples was the source package. And in the docs, it said that you can, like, if you create your own source package, for example, you won't have a problem with the name because it will be used with the source namespace. I think that was the example, if I remember correctly. I don't know, it was very early.
It's related in the way that another main idea of Frontity is the use of namespaces in the state. So if you, in your project, you can see here that under the state, you have several namespaces. You have the Frontity namespace, the router namespace, the source namespace, and the theme namespace. And inside each portion of the state, you have different data. So the idea of this is to create like portions of the state that are related to specific packages. For example, this portion of the state is assigned to the theme. So all the state variables that needs to be managed from the theme can be defined here. And all the time you will do something like state.theme.whatever. So this doesn't collide with the properties in the state that needs to be managed in the router or in the source. Why this is different? Because this is assigned to the source package, the WP source package. And this package is in charge of doing requests to the WordPress REST API, getting the data, and merging this data into the state. That's why this portion is the one that contains all the data retrieved from the WordPress REST API.
Okay.
See, the idea is also that some properties and actions that are defined under those namespaces are mandatory because they are defined in the interface. So yeah, that's the thing. We define a source interface, and that somehow is obligating packages under that namespace to implement that those specific actions like fetch and get and so on, or those specific properties in the state like data or post categories, etc. So in a way that if a package implements that interface, those types, it can be the WP source or whatever source you have implemented, that it's supposed to work the same way so other packages can use the source API, the source interface, and interact with that package like it's the WP source or whatever source, the GraphQL source or any other source. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, another idea related to namespaces is that they are used across all the different properties that are passed to the React components through connect. When you connect a React component, you get via props these elements. You get actions, libraries, routes, and state. And each one of these properties is split into the different namespaces they are using. So for example, a state is using the namespace Frontity, the namespace router, source, or theme. And in each part, you will have the proper data. But also in actions, and as you can see here, you have the namespace router, the namespace source, and the namespace theme. So you can have actions for the namespace theme, and you can have actions for the namespace source. And this way, everything is kind of organized. So then it can be used in the different React components.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get it. So I think
Great.
those were all my questions.
Yes. We did it. We were able to answer or at least provide some insights
Of course.
over each question. Yeah, this one we need to do some more research about this, but yeah, I think that we gave you some ideas regarding
definitely.
this topic.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
And I think that yeah, I think that we're done. So thank you very much, Laura, for
Thank
your
you for your
project.
time.
Thank you for your questions. It's always a pleasure to be in touch with real projects and real questions and see how the framework can be improved in any way, maybe some better documentation or some things that can be changed in the framework. And yeah, if you have any more questions, we can continue the conversation in the community forum.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
don't hesitate in asking whatever you may find in your Frontity project.
Well, thank you for your time and thank you for your explanations because it really helped. And every idea that you gave me, I will try it out. So yeah, that was great. Thanks.
Great. Okay, so goodbye everybody.